What is going on, YouTube people? Neo Cards and Comics here. Sunday, weekly show. It's the end of the week for some, the beginning of the week for others. But we are here to play a little news catch up, dip in on each of the major markets, see what's going on, and just kind of chit chat a little bit. That's what we got happening. So, like, comment, subscribe, you guys and girls. Know all the YouTube nonsense down below. Very quickly, before I forget, details in the description of this video. Two spots left in the best ball NBA league on Underdog. $10. There's sign up bonuses, the whole 9 yards. Information on that will be in the video description down below. Let's fill those last 2 spots and get that draft rolling. We've already filled 2 NFL drafts. Those are off and running. The first one's already, actually, they're both done. They've both already finished, now that I think about it. So let's get this NBA one off the ground. And if there's interest for a second one, I will gladly run a second one. Maybe we'll wait a little closer to the NBA season for that. Let's get into some news and notes and touch on a few things. Obviously, the story of the week continues to be the 86 Fleer boxes from the National. Did the video yesterday on Whatnot and Golden's response. They're doing a second box. BBCE's had multiple statements on that, believe it, not believe it. That's up to you. I personally don't. I don't like their excuse. I don't like the way that they've handled it. And the fact that Golden and Whatnot have teamed up to do another box and no real mention of BBCE or anything like that. Kind of, they haven't said anything directly about BBCE, but it's like an actions speak louder than words. It's kind of like, yeah, this box was sus. We're going to give another one away, even though you guys haven't said a whole lot about it. So that's, that continues to wrap up. To be quite honest, I'll be glad to never have to talk about that again. I do hope the next box goes off cleanly and there is no drama involved, because that horse has been beaten thoroughly. Be glad to move on from that one. The other thing going on, Vintage Card Breaks has had their name in the news with some nonsense going on with pack switching. I will be honest, I haven't dug fully into that beyond the Sports Card Radio video on it. But at quick glance, seems not great. Do your homework before you break with someone, regardless of who it is. Make sure that you are breaking with someone trustworthy, reputable, and always protect yourself. In this hobby, it seems to be becoming, I don't know that it's actually becoming more shady by the day. I think it's just always been this shady. There's just more lights, camera, action around now and more eyeballs on this stuff to call these things out as they occur in real time. I think in the past, people used to be able to slip things by a lot easier, but now everything's on display for the world to see and be picked apart, which on one hand is good. It can also go a little overboard in some cases, but in these last couple anyways, it has definitely been a good thing. Also, I saw Run Good Life did a video about a week late on this one on Steel City Collectibles and some shenanigans with National Silver packs. Once again, I have not dug in or done due diligence on that one, so I would encourage you to go check out Run Good Life's video on that. But it didn't look, once again, that's another thing. It's hard to prove, but the optics don't look great on it. So, look like maybe some nonsense going on with Nationals packs, but don't know for sure. Go check out Run Good's video on that one. One last thing to talk about before we hop into that. Let's give a quick shout out to today's sponsor of the video. That is B Sports presents the Shipshawana card show on Labor Day with a trade night the night before. If you followed the channel for a while, you know that I really, really enjoy this show. A lot of my local friends really enjoy this show. Is it in the middle of nowhere, Indiana? Yes, sirree. Is it in a barn? Yes, it is. A very modern barn, though. It's in the Farmstead Inn Expo barn. But very nice venue, actually. Very, very nice venue. Very, very cool location. About a 4-hour drive for me, give or take. I'm 95% sure I will be attending this show. I did miss the last one, the trade night the night before. is really kind of what pushes it over the edge for me. Because of the drive, I do have to spend the night up there for the show, but the trade night makes that a little bit more worth the trip. Fantastic show, about 180-ish tables, and I'm trying to arrange, and it's more on me than it is on him. I'm going to try to have Brad on for a quick conversation just to kind of talk to a showrunner and what it's like, show promoter, what it's like to try to build a show like this and some of the ins and outs of that and just his general thoughts on, card shows and making them better and how to grow one. I just thought that would be an interesting conversation to have for someone that's behind the scenes of what I'm going to call a regional show, a larger regional show. So shout out to Brad and shout out to the Ship Shawana show. Once again, absolutely fantastic show. Highly encourage you to check it out if you were in that general neck of the woods. Last bit of news, and then we'll go ahead and pop into some data and charts and graphs. Filtering back to a story from about a week or two ago, right after the National, Go GTS has come out and said on their last live stream, I caught part of it, where there was the stuff that came out, and I did a video on it, about Fanatics cutting off GTS distribution. Well, GTS has revealed that they cut off them partially. So what's going on here is that Fanatics has cut them off from hobby distribution. GTS will still distribute retail product, and it sounds like international product, but hobby shop allocations will be coming directly from Fanatics. Now, to me, that seems pretty okay, because I think where a lot of the shady nonsense went on was with the hobby distribution, with product getting released and then getting held back for price increases, this, that, and the other thing. That stuff I don't believe happens on the retail side, because frankly, I don't think Walmart and Target would put up with that. They would just tell them to go jump in a lake. You can't bully around Walmarts and Targets of the world from a distribution standpoint. Don't work that way. Local card shop, you could do that. Walmart, Target, not so much. So not surprising that Fanatics would take over LCS distribution, obviously a much smaller distribution network, and leave, moving a bunch of blaster boxes around to them. Also, that's probably not where most of the margin was being left on the table, was retail. Retail has an MSRP that is basically stuck to. It's sold to Walmart at X price. Walmart sells it at Y price. On hobby box land, that doesn't necessarily work like that. The secondary market more or less sets the price. And then the stores shift their pricing depending on that, along with the distributors. So that's where all the money was getting left on the table, and that's what Fanatics wants to recapture. So by them going direct to hobby shop, they capture that lost revenue. The revenue on the retail side might not necessarily be as dramatic, that they need to kind of rein that in from distribution practices, if that makes sense. So a little clarification there from GTS, and it kind of makes sense that at this point, maybe Fanatics doesn't want to deal with the mass retail distribution like they do the hobby shop side of things. So we'll see if that changes over time. It absolutely could. In 3 years, is this still going to be the case? We don't know. So that's the latest on that one. Let's go ahead and pop on over to good old gem rate and do a little check-in on grading before we dig into some market movers and some prices and stuff like that. So anyone that's followed the channel for the last couple months, my pal Ryan over at Gem Rate ran us some custom reports to track 2021 football and 2021 basketball. Basketball's still a little too new in the pipeline, but the reason why I asked him for this was to get an idea or a sense of where the current demand is for grading. So we've been checking in on this every couple weeks just to kind of see what's going on and also kind of track the gem rates, etc. So first up, PSA. 7,500 cards graded, a little bit above that with a 33% gem rate. They are the leader in the clubhouse by quite a bit. When we first started tracking this, them and SGC were very close together. And remember, SGC still virtually has no backlog. PSA, we're seeing more and more of like the economy orders start to hit and things like that. SGC, 3,900 cards graded. So about 3,000, 3,500, 3,600 behind there. A 30% gem rate. So Grading slightly harder than PSA. Seems like PSA's picked up a little bit. Their gem rate was lower than SGC's last time we looked at this, I believe, but still a very respectable number out of SGC. CSG, the newest kid on the block of the major graders, sitting at 1,200, but only a 22% gem rate. Ouch. So they seem to be grading a little bit tougher on these, but the other thing to keep in mind here is that CSG, for the time being, is getting a lot of lower end, cheaper bulk rate cards at this point. Not everything, but that's where they're making their bones, is on the lower end stuff. They have about a 1 month turnaround time on bulk right now. So I wonder, is it that they are grading harder, or are people being faster and looser on what they send because it's only $15 to grade at bulk? Don't know. I'm just speculating on that one. Last but not least, our good old friends over at Beckett. Only 380 cards graded, 32% gem rate, so right in line with SGC and PSA in regards to gem rate percentage, but only 380 cards graded from Prism Football. There's really no way to slice it. That's just not a great look, boys and girls. Only 380 cards going to Beckett so far from 2021 Prism. Kind of just shows you where things are at with a demand for modern grading. And I'm talking demand for grading services. Keep that in mind. I'm not talking about the slab on the secondary market. We're not talking about comps, how liquid something is, none of that stuff. Just demand for the current grading services. And right now, Beckett is a distant fourth. Now, when you flip that around on the secondary market, that is not the case. The respect for the Beckett slab is still there, but the demand for their grading services at present for at least ultra modern cards doesn't seem to be crazy. And it is also, we'll talk about it in about a week or two, about a week and a half. I'm just been kind of slowly watching the daily gem rate numbers when it comes to number of cards graded and stuff like that. Beckett's numbers are pretty low. Now, it could be they did, to give them the benefit of the doubt, they did move offices this month. I don't know what that entailed. So maybe that's impacting their output a little bit. I don't know. But not a super hot look there. PSA running away with it's not that surprising. SGC being in second, I don't think is that surprising. And then CSG kind of floating in no man's land there at third. Seems to all check out. The surprising one to me is Beckett only having 381 graded. We'll take a look at basketball real quick. I don't want to throw a ton of weight into this because these numbers are still super weird. Because as of right now, PSA only has 816. But you have to remember that's only going to be like Express and Super Express level stuff. NBA Prism just hasn't been on the market long enough yet for even economy orders to get through. So they're only at 816. SGC is the right behind them at 557. CSG at 14 and Beckett at 68. So Beckett actually passing CSG when it comes to NBA. So we'll see how these numbers float off. I'm not putting a lot of stock into the NBA numbers at this point, but I figured we'd just glance at them real quick since I had it up. We'll see how that filters out. I think that's going to take about another month or so till we have a better idea of what those numbers begin to look like. Also on the grading note, because I did the video on it the other day, and I mentioned this on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter if you're not. My PSA value submission from the national special, the $18 one, I dropped that in the mail on Wednesday, the week of the national, the day that we left. I dropped that in the mail to get shipped out yesterday. It got checked in completely for an entered grading. So the list actually popped on the site for me to go in and review if there's any errors or anything like that, but it is officially entered grading. And once again, that got mailed right before we left. Now, I do know people, I've seen screenshots, I've had people reach out to me that sent stuff in right when that opened at the beginning of the month, and their stuff is through grading and in QA1 already. Now, that's where things seem to be sitting. I can tell you I have a $30 value submission when they rolled that out, when that first opened up, I sent in those 4 Bowman Chrome prospect cards, the auto, the orange, and then like 2 random sapphire cards base at $30 per. Those are in QA1 and they have been in QA1 for a while. And I expect like a lot of these national orders and stuff like that are probably going to sit in QA1/QA2 for probably weeks on end until we get closer to the backlog finishing. And the guys from PSA on the last PSA pod even said there's probably going to be a week where last year's like old, super old bulk value orders, the very end of the line, is going to be shipping out the same time as some of these other value orders. So I'll be interested to track how the $30 one moves versus the $18 one and how much earlier I get that $30 one back. And I sent that like a month before versus the $18 one. I'll be interested to see what the time gap ends up being there. I think I sent them a month apart. I'll be curious if I get them back a month apart. My guess is no. I have a feeling those $18 value orders are going to come back pretty quick. That's just a gut. I could be wrong on that one, but we'll see. We shall see. With all that being said, let's go ahead and dive into market movers. Link in the description down below. $1 for your first month. Let's look at some market indexes really quick here. This is the overall market index, and we're going to see a trend here. I'm going 60 days on these because I have a theory, not necessarily a theory, but it kind of feels like, and I did this video about 30 days ago looking at 30 days worth of data, and now I'm looking at 60 days worth of data. You guys and girls tell me, it kind of feels like we may have stabilized. I'll probably do a dedicated video on this week. This is the SCI 500, so this is like their top 500 cards. This is over the last 60 days. A 0.1% change. So basically flat. We'll run through these as we move through the other sports. Here's baseball. This is Ultra Modern 2018 to 2020. Here's Modern 2010 to 2017. This is once again over the last 60 days. Ultra Modern is ever so slightly up. Modern is ever so slightly down. That's about 6%. But this index is heavily weighted by Trout, who's taken a little bit of a beating. And also recently, like Tatis first Bowmans have taken a beating. More on that in a second. So I believe that's what's weighing that down. If you probably took Trout out of this, I bet you this would be right in line with everything else. Not 100% sure on that, just speculation on my part. But once again, we kind of see over the last 60, things have kind of held, generally speaking, like a couple percent up, a couple percent down. But generally staying around a flat line position. Let's look at some individual players, specifically Tatis in this case. We're now a little over, I'm recording this Saturday afternoon, so we are 8 days at time of recording past the suspension announcement. So we could kind of finally see where his stuff's starting to settle in at. And I have a feeling the lowest part of his prices will have been in the last 7 days. Typically, what you see happen in these instances is everyone that doesn't want to hold and just immediately wants to dump, dumps. So you have a huge amount of inventory hit the market all at once. There's not enough buyers for it, and that creates lower ending auctions. What then typically happens is not a lot of stuff begins to hit market at auction. So everyone's sitting on their high buy it now prices that no one wants to touch. So all of a sudden there's less inventory in the market. And then eventually it slowly starts to creep up again because the people that wanted to dump, dumped. The people that are willing to ride this out have committed to riding this out into next year. And then, every once in a while, something will happen that maybe someone has to sell a card. So they fire up the 99-cent auction and let it rip, or they need the funds for something else, whatever the case might be. And then those cards hit the market in the middle. And because there's limited inventory hitting the market at reasonable prices, it actually slowly starts to drive things back up again. We've seen this time and time again. I wouldn't be surprised if Tatis follows the same thing. Now, there could be, ups, downs, all arounds. That's fine. But generally speaking, I think like immediately after is sometimes the best time to buy because that's when a bunch of inventory is hitting. And we may be seeing that already. You can kind of see here, this is the 12th when things really hit the fan. And you can see the graphs dip, and then as we move throughout the week, you actually see them slowly start to tick back up again. Now, very limited data sample size here, rather, so I'm not going to go out and make a bunch of wild predictions to get myself in trouble, but I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing slow upticks from here. Generally speaking, how much damage was done? I initially was thinking between 30 and 50%. It seems to be a little less than 50%, more like 20 to 40%. But let's just kind of run through these real quick. This is just this Topps Chrome base, and then we'll look at Bowman stuff here in a second. Just the straight base is down 40%. The refractor is down 20%. X-fractor down 20%. Pink refractor down 50%. And the prism refractor down 40%. So pretty big drops across the board on a lot of that stuff. The one that probably intrigues me the most on this list for the price point would be the prism at $250. If you could even find one at that price, that's the tricky part sometimes. But I've always really liked that card. I've owned a couple over the years, traded them away prior to the season starting. But that's a really nice looking card. But for $250, that's a really good price on that card, I think. And not, once again, at these Topps Chrome refractor levels, you're not putting huge amounts of money out there. So it's not like, you know, your downside risk is a lot lower versus like a 2K Bowman Chrome auto. Let's go ahead and take a peek at some other stuff. This is his 2019 Topps Chrome rookie auto PSA 10. Also took about a 40% hit, went from 1,300, and I went back to August 1st on these to start these graphs. 1,350 at the beginning of August, post suspension 845, about a 37% hit. And once again, you do kind of see, you know, here's right after the suspension, we have a 900 and then a 750, bounced back up to 1,100 and then went back down again to 845. But I'll be very interested to see if this 750 number, you know, a day or two after the suspension actually ends up being the lowest. And then if it bounces back upwards from here, be interesting to follow that. Let's look at his first Bowman prospect auto. Only a couple sales on this, but very well timed. We have one on the 11th, which was the day before the suspension. Ouch. $3,500 PSA 10 first Bowman. We have one on the 15th, a couple days after the suspension was announced, $2,150. I didn't go across the board on this one. I just went straight PSA 10 because then you can kind of do the math going downwards from there. BGS 9.5s have been doing about 1,200. PSA 9s have been doing a little bit under 1,000. I've seen some BGS 9.5s get up to 1,400 depending on the subgrades, maybe even 1,500. But they're going 12 to 1,500-ish. PSA 9s are going for about 1,000. But huge drop there. Once again, 38%. That 20 to 40% number, depending on the card on Tatis, seems to be the damage done. Someone else that has not been in the news, neither good nor bad, but also taken a big hit. I just pulled this one out because I noticed it on the charts when I was looking at it. I'm going back to the beginning of the season for this one. Vlad Guerrero Jr., a player that I love and adore. He's having a fine season. It's just not anything special like it was last year. He's not going completely nuclear. He actually had a pretty big hitting streak going on, I believe, recently. But his stuff has come way down. So interesting buying opportunity there. This is his first Bowman auto. At the beginning of the season, this was a $4,000, basically a $3,900 card. It's down to $2,300 now, a 40% drop from the beginning of the year. $1,600 on Mad Vlad. Like I said, very interesting buy. There's some very interesting buy low baseball guys right now. This was the same time of year last year that I really wanted to get into Soto. And then Soto went ballistic to close out the season and all his stuff went nutty. I do think there's some interesting buys to be had, non-Tatis related, in the world of baseball that I have my eyes on, and I need to set up some more save searches and digging into some stuff. But there's two very trendy guys from this year. Vlad is one, and then there's another one that we've also talked about recently on the channel that I got my eyeballs on that I think there's some interesting plays to be made there for, you know, off-season buys and then potentially sell in March or April. Football, same thing on the market index. What have we seen over the last 60 days? Ultramodern football up ever so slightly. Not surprising, and a lot of that's been in the last couple weeks as those guys start to get a lot of buzz. Modern football, 2010 to 2017, down 8%. Once again, not super surprising as A lot of this is driven by Mahomes, and a lot of his stuff took a hit. Even with that being said, you do see the last week or so that index starting to tick up as well. Let's look into just a couple individual things here. What I have pulled up is 2021 Prism Silvers, but this time in PSA 10. We are now far enough into the product life cycle that we're starting to get enough PSA 10 sales that we could start to see how these guys are stacking up. Number one on the list is Trey Lance at 1,500. That was a single sell. So I want to see what the next one goes for. I'm not, basing everything off of one-off $1,500 sell on a Trey Lance Silver PSA 10 to see where exactly these are falling in the order. But the other ones, we have a handful of sells on them. So it'll be, I think we can kind of get an idea what the pecking order is looking like. So we'll put an asterisk next to the Trey Lance. We see Justin Fields and Mac Jones both going for the mid 800s. Interesting to see Fields actually slightly above Mac Jones in this case. We have Zach Wilson at 660. That is a lone sale as well. And then we have Jamar Chase at 560, Davis Mills at 500, and then Micah Parsons with a single solitary card going off at 250. Once again, this will kind of sort itself out as we move further and further into the season, and more of these come back from PSA, and we get more and more transactions once the season actually starts and things start getting swingy. But up until then, you can kind of get an idea what the preseason market is for these guys. Let's pop on over to basketball real quick and close this puppy out. Once again, ultra modern indexes over the last 60 days. Ultra modern up 6%, almost 6%. Modern down 2.8%, so down ever so slightly. And you do notice modern starting to kind of swing upwards here the last couple days or so. It does seem like NBA is starting to pick up steam just a little bit. I'm noticing some interesting price movements kind of across the board here. This is over the last 30 days, and I think I might do a little bit of a deeper dive on this, potentially this week, maybe next week. We'll see. But this is PSA 10 Silver Prisms. We're seeing a lot of green for the first time in a long time. And once again, looking at the last 30 days worth of data, so that would take us to right back before the National. And I always think of the National as when I want to start buying NBA. A little bit before the National, and the National is when I usually dive back into the NBA market. And it appears like we're starting to see some upticks. Like I said, Ja Morant up 33%. Once again, silver PSA 10s. Anthony Edwards up 30%. Luka up 10%. Tatum up 23%. Brandon Ingram up 25%. LaMelo up just 7%. Garland up 35%. Trae Young up 15%. Zion basically staying flat, up 5%. Tyler Hero, for some reason, up 25%. Jaylen Brown up 16%. Jarrett Allen with a big bump at plus 70% there. And then you get kind of into the more fringe guys there. But some pretty big names on that list from the modern, ultra-modern class from the last couple of years. Jaws, Edwards, Luka, Tatum, etc. all on the upswing, starting to pick back up again. So I just found that very interesting that a lot of guys seem to be moving in an upward trend direction, at least on Silver Prisms. So like I said, I think I might do a little bit of a deeper dive on the NBA market for a video this week. Dipping in and taking a quick peek at 21 NBA Prism Silvers. We're looking at raw here and raw only. Once again, a little too early for the graded market. Some things are starting to hit, but not enough to draw conclusions on. So just kind of curious to see how these guys stack up. We have Jalen Green at 130, leading the pack behind Cade at 102, Scotty Barnes at 86, Josh Giddey at just under 80, Evan Mobley at 75, my boy Jonathan Kuminga 53, then a big drop off to Moses Moody, Io, Franz, and then we get into the cheap guys. So a couple things I want to kind of comment on here real quick, and then we'll wrap this puppy. Interesting to kind of see how the top guys are shaking out. I've been seeing a lot of Jalen Green buzz lately on the old IGs. Quite frankly, I would rather be going after Scotty Barnes and potentially Evan Mobley for the price points, because they're going to be on winning teams. Jalen Green could put up big numbers, but their team is going to be garbage. Cade is intriguing to me. I think the Pistons could be like last year's Cavs, where they're a little feisty, but I don't know that they're going to be quite on that level to make a playoff or a run at a play-in game. I could be wrong on that. But that team, I think, is going to be at minimum very fun to watch. But Mobley and Scotty Barnes are on two playoff contending teams, both very, very good. I get Evans a big guy. That could hold him back a little bit. He's a monster defensively, so Scotty. But if Evan figures out his offensive game, he could be putting up some absolutely huge numbers. The other thing that I want to touch on, and I'm not going to touch on really any individual players, the bottom part of this list, like, Jalen Suggs, Alfred Sengun, Davion Mitchell, Cameron Thomas, Chris Durante, these guys down here, these $5 to $10 to $15 guys, your gambles, if you will, those are the guys you should be starting to gobble up right now. If you have a feeling about someone and you could take a $5 or $10 flyer on like a Jalen Suggs, who kind of really had a bad year last year, but you really believe in him. I personally don't. I think he's fine, but I'm not like, big on Jalen Suggs one way or the other. But just substitute whatever player you want, or substitute whatever player you want for that. The point is these $5 to $10 silver guys are where you could see, if a guy really hits, you could see a massive increase in prices. Think Darius Garland as a relevant example to this. His rookie year was not great. He was coming off a knee injury, didn't really play that great. He was fine. He showed some flashes, but he didn't have like a huge year or anything like that. And then he really took off from there. His stuff was dirt cheap after his rookie season compared to where it is today, even when the market was inflated. Find guys like that. If there's a project that you believe in, my example was of a guy like this that I bought a lot of dirt cheap because I just had a good feeling about him, was Kevin Porter Jr. when he was on the Cavs. And he obviously had a really good season, and then he went off the deep end. But guys like that, low risk, low dollar entry points, are where you could really see nice returns, especially if you're not playing at a bigger budget. I get the sex appeal of flipping the $10,000 flawless RPA Herbert or whatever, but most of us are making our money on this stuff, and it's low risk. If it doesn't pan out, you're out $5 or $10 on a couple silvers of a guy. If it hits and you just need to hit more often than you miss, you can make some nice profits on this stuff, especially if you think you really got it nailed and you could find good, clean raw and double down and send it in for grading and maybe nail a 10 and get it back with the timing right. You could turn things around really nicely and really grind out on this low end stuff. Same thing goes for football. I'm more of an NBA guy when it comes to stuff like this. So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there. That's all I have for you guys and girls. Like, comment, subscribe. Don't forget, 2 spots left in the Fantasy Basketball League. Check out Market Movers. And if you're in the area, head on out to the Ship Shawana show on Labor Day weekend. That is all I have for you guys and girls. Catch you on the next one. Peace.